Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to AIC's third edition of WebWindow. My name is Anne, and I will be moderating this 60-minute session today. My colleagues Thomas Menze and Florian Güldner has prepared a very informative session today, talking about the automation markets and how to identify growth drivers and inhibitors and what role industrial cybersecurity plays in that way. At the end of the presentation, you can stay further 5 to 10 minutes online and ask questions if you would like to do that. This will be really appreciated from our side. And now, without any further delay, I would like to pass over the word to our expert today, Florian Güldner. Florian, can you hear us?
Yes, thanks. I can hear you very, very well. Also from my side, very warm welcome. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Florian Güldner. I am the person on the right side of your screen. Today with me is Thomas Menze. He will take the role of the expert when it comes to industrial security. We do have overall 3 topics today. We're going to look at the markets and the market outlook, and that's the very first part of the webinar. We're going to look at trends and developments, and the last point, as already mentioned, is topic cybersecurity, and Thomas will discuss whether this is more an enabler or more a stumbling block, or maybe both when it comes to automation. The last point will be a Q&A session where you're welcome to ask any questions. You can also write down questions that if you have one during the presentation using the chat window of the software we're using here. So without further ado, we're going to come to the outlook, and the bad news is, bottom line, all the major economic research associations, research companies have lowered their GDP projections. We really had a slow recovery from this great recession, so to say, meaning the financial crisis of 2008-2009. And now, after a few good years, we are actually hitting another phase of slowdown. We have a lot of troubles in Europe, including the Greek debt crisis, the political crisis. Also, we have the issue with Russia. We have regional unrests in the Middle East and Northern Africa. And also, what is currently inhibiting growth are the low oil prices. Industries that are close to commodities, ranging from oil and gas all the way to chemicals as well as cement and glass, are hit stronger than those industries that are closer to the consumer market. And what is also inhibiting growth from the US point of view is a very, very strong dollar. And we can also argue that in some cases it's even overvalued, which will be a threat to the overall economy, especially when the Fed starts increasing interest rates again. Nevertheless, even with the strong dollar, looking at the GDP level, North America / US will be the best performing rich world economy in 2015 and probably also in 2016. Now, this does not come that surprising, this slowdown, because, and I want to quote Kenneth E. Boulding here, anyone who believes in indefinite growth on the physical finite planet is either mad or an economist. I am an economist, but I really don't believe in that indefinite growth. And I'm going to share with you a very good example, a very figurative example, I think. And that is a quote from Hans-Dieter Bader, former CEO of Edeka. Edeka is a German retailer. And he said 720 liters, that's it. You can do as much as you want. So this means every one of us, on average, drinks 720 liters of fluids each year. That's a split between milk, tea, coffee, juice, soft drinks, water, obviously, liquor, wine, and beer. But that's this 720 liters. These are fixed. I mean, there is competition between these sorts of drinks, between coffee and tea, for example, or soft drinks and water. But basically, that's it. So you can't increase the 720 liters by great extent. This means growth is limited. In this example, growth is only possible via higher prices. And regardless the technological development, the demand won't increase that fast. So you can produce more, but that does not really mean consumers are willing to spend more. If you're able to produce twice as fast as smartphones and have product life cycles of around 2 months, that does not necessarily mean you will increase the revenues. It also means that companies that do adopt late will suffer ultimately. We may see a regional shift going closer to the consumer again, because what happens is that as degree of automation rises, and this rises because of competition, the share of labor costs decreases again, which means investments is more and more becoming a question of capital costs, capital availability, political stability, etc., etc., etc. So this is one reason why we may think that we experience a regional shift back, leading now to more investment again closer to the consumer demand in Western Europe, in North America, but obviously also to the increasing middle class in China and other emerging countries. Now, what does that mean for automation? And what you see here is our automation index. We have this automation index for 3 regions, Americas, Europe, and Asia. For all regions, the automation index basically represents the sum of revenues by automation companies. It requires a little bit more work than that, but bottom line, it's the automation revenues of the companies located in the Americas. And what you see here is a very steep decline starting basically in Q4 2014 here. And this has a lot to do with the oil prices, because we do have a very high exposure of the US economy and the US automation market to energy intensive industries, especially to the oil industries. And we had a boom in unconventional oil and gas from 2010 and onwards, which really contributed to growth, and this certainly is no longer a growth driver. We also see that we had a very slow recovery here after the recession. We have a very high import dependency, and this does not only impact consumer electronics, cars, etc., but that also is valid for automation equipment, and especially recently when Japanese automotive companies as well as European chemical companies set up production plants in US, they basically brought with them their machinery as well as their automation equipment, leading to actually also to growth in Japan as well as in Western Europe. We currently can ask ourselves, as already mentioned, if the US dollar is overvalued. I currently think it may be slightly overvalued, but let's see. And in the end, it does depend a lot on speculation as well as on political decision making. To the European Automation Index, we had a faster recovery after the crisis, but after that we are more or less in a stable position and a sideways trend. We had a smaller down cycle in 2013. We entered basically also a down cycle in early 2015, late 2014. That depends, that's also caused by the developments in China and Russia, which basically failed to increase demand in the past. These were really export destinations of European companies. We also see that currently a lot of the OEMs in Europe still depend on the huge backlog that comes from 2014. So we are really gloomy when it comes to the forecast, and we think that 2016 will be slightly above 0 overall. And much more than in North America, we do have saturated markets in Europe because the population is constant or declining. Now coming to Asia, we do have a strong downward trend here, but afterwards we're rather stable. This is basically was induced due to the yen devaluation, because this is measured in US dollars, so we can add up Japan, Korea, China, etc. But we see in future increasingly demand in China to automate larger parts of production and to automate more and increase quality as well as quantity. What we also see in China is a build new mentality rather than brownfield projects. So if a chemical plant, and even also if, for example, even a coal-fired power plant reaches the end of the life cycle, there is often no modernization, no revamp, no projects to keep the plant running, but often the end user decides to just tear it down or just leave it where it is and build a new plant right next to that. That does increase the demand for automation equipment, but it also increases the competition, because on each new project you now have a greenfield project and there is no consideration of the installed base or of the installed automation system in place. Looking at the industry and the overall market, we have shorter machine life cycles in Asia than we do have on a global level, and especially than we do have in EMEA as well as North America. And really, our view is that this build new mentality is not really a sustainable business. Limited, and this already becomes visible. Looking at the Chinese stock exchange market, this can induce more volatility actually, because companies need to fund the money, they need to stock market to increase the cash on hand and to afford the investments. Now, what you see here is our index on acquisitions. For each quarter here, we list the number of acquisitions in any given quarter. You see clearly that we had this slowdown during the financial crisis because no bank was actually willing to finance large merger and acquisition. We had, after the crisis, the market consolidation. This is really typical movement. But then what we observed is a steep decline in the number of acquisitions over each quarter. So it can be that there's actually a lot of pressure in the market, and we're going to expect a merger and acquisition boom over the next years. It can also be that companies are not finding the right target, and it can also be that most of the targets are becoming bigger. One of the companies that was very active in the past was Schneider Electric, but after the Menze acquisition, the company actually did some time to reconsolidate. Same is true for Siemens and Dresser-Rand, which were the major acquisitions over the last quarters. Now, just as before we continue, as a big summary, we do have gloomy outlooks. We do have markets that are stepping sideways rather than up over the last quarters. We do have a rather unstable financial framework, which also caused the slowdown in acquisitions. And in the end, the question is how, in this environment, how is automation evolving? What are the trends? And just to step back a little here, we have some history class basically. In 1900, there was not much automation. Most of the work was manual. It was repetitive labor tasks. We had a very small and limited number of variances of consumer goods and cars in this example. This number of variances and car types increased from 1 to roughly 15 and above right now. And of each car type that is typically produced, we have around 30,000 variances, which for, let's say, average automotive company means they do not build the same car twice on a day, maybe in a week or even in 1 year. Overall, the automation shifted from manual work to more higher degree of automation, and from PLCs and now more industrial PCs on the plant, and we have seen an increasing use of embedded technology right now. What stays after all this details is that end users as well as automation suppliers do face an increasing amount of complexity. Just the required output, the number of products produced increased exponentially. And there is one German sociologist that took a look into how to deal with complexity, and that was Niklas Luhmann. Now, please don't go online and try to buy his books. These books are terribly written and horrible to understand, but the major conclusion from his core work is that you can deal with complexity by modularization and having standard interfaces for communication. And this is one of the biggest trends that we see. End users do have modular plants. They look more into modular machinery that can edit and basically regroup to produce different outcome. And it's not easy to measure this complexity, but here are 5 examples of industries that are hit very strongly by that. And just to have the example of the machinery industry going back to 1997, compared that to now, the average OEM currently builds twice the number of machines. So he has much more product variety to offer. At the same time, and that's the light blue line, the life cycle is shortened by around 20%. And also he needs roughly twice the number of raw material input. That's also a way to deal with complexity are modular products. And this means you can basically combine 3 or 4 input ingredients basically to make a new product. And this has been done very, very well in the automotive industry. Twice as much end products with only 30% more raw material and components purchased. And chemicals is a very extreme example. Where complexity really increased exponentially over the last years. So what I want to show you here is that across many industries, this is a topic. It's not only automotive, it's also the process industries. And this rising complexity is one reason why people look into the concept of Industry 4.0 or Industrial Internet of Things. And there are many, many questions when it comes to these buzzwords and these megatrends in automation. But we want to keep those business aspects aside for a moment, just talk about the technologies involved in these megatrends. So, what do we have? We have really an increasing use of integrated systems. That means control, electrical safety, energy management, and security. Those were previously done by individual teams, separated teams, and separate systems, and separate technologies, and are now more and more coming closer together. We see more built-in security, and Thomas will comment on that later. We see more software-defined systems, which means hardware is basically becoming a commodity. So let's define the applications, let's define the requirements of the software, and afterwards we'll find the right hardware to that. We also see a rise of location-independent software, which means the applications runs everywhere, runs on the platform, just you basically often need an HTML5 enabled browser. And that also comes to this trend of software as a service. In the 90s, there was a lot of discussion about this breathing factory, and that's exactly what it is. If you have software as a service, you can scale up and you can scale down very, very easily without having all this inflexible hardware all around. Talking about distributed devices and intelligence and computing power basically everywhere. We're talking about an increasing role of application software to optimize the workflow, and often it really emphasizes the role of the user and usability. Mobility will be a key here. This really also traces back to this bring your own device. So the workforce is really mobile. There's not one workspace for one employee. We're talking about virtualization. This is a big chance for users to reduce the engineering time, to reduce the engineering costs. And this is exactly the next step. The engineering is costly, is timely, and is a one of the factors that really lengthens time to market. And here with 3D modeling, simulation, and 3D printing, as well as virtual commissioning, the time to market can be really, really shortened. As we have the demographic change and engineers are becoming scarcer and scarcer, we do see more and more focus on the workforce to leverage what is there more efficiently. This means we do have to have a collaborative process automation or collaborative automation system where we do bring together not only the technology but also the people, the groups, and the tasks. So everything has to be really combined. And while we often see the technology being able to do that, the hinderer are often the organization, the mentality, as well as sometimes the installed base that hinders any collaboration. All this does need data. So we're talking about pervasive Ethernet from the office down to the sensor level. We're talking about communication standards. Remember Niklas Luhmann and his reducing complexity. We need to standardize, and currently for the process industry, it seems to be that Foundation Fieldbus and Profibus PA are the key products, or the protocols, sorry. And we see the emergence of ISA 108 as field device management standard. And while we also observe that most DCSs, most production are currently based on Ethernet, most still run on proprietary protocols. And if you want to expand, if you want to have this breathing factory or breathing systems that you can scale up and down, one of the largest enabler is wireless. Wireless is great, though it actually also proven that those wireless mesh networks are not working in deterministic systems that well as they should. But wireless is just a good way to expand without the cable costs and to move quickly and include new functionality. But, and this is the big problem, wireless basically also means you have an invisible access point to your system everywhere. And this may not always be that beneficial. And I think this is the point where you, Thomas, step in and tell us how to secure the systems and make it safe.
Okay, yeah, it's my pleasure. Warm welcome here from my end. So we are going to discuss the industrial cybersecurity bit. And precisely we are going to discuss, next slide please, more or less 5 topics. Today I've prepared the evolution of attack sophistication, so we can see that attackers become more sophisticated. We discuss typical attack vectors in Europe and North America. We discuss a little bit, or we analyze a little bit the operator objectives on cybersecurity. We talk regarding the market, and last but not least, maybe the most important thing, we are talking regarding cybersecurity. How does it look like tomorrow? So let's start with the attack sophistication, and therefore the next slide, please. Bad news here, the intruder knowledge, that is the green curve, becomes lower and lower because the attackers does not need to be too sophisticated, because they can simply download malware and things doing more or less an automatic attack against automation systems from the internet. So this kind of software is available. There are search engines looking for automation systems directly connected to the internet. So more or less every school kid could attack an industrial system if he's downloading the right software and scanning a little bit the internet. So with all this in mind, we're coming to the next slide, and that shows us how big this impact is. And I have prepared some attacks happened here in Europe. So first of all, because of the relative high attack level, Europe, they formed a new public-private collaboration initiative between operators and experts. This is called CRITS. And this little group is the same which already exists in North America. That is part of the Department of Homeland Security. That is the third unit, and they are tracking, analyzing attack against automation systems, and they are providing best practices how to harden these kind of systems. Parallel to this European CRITS group, in Germany we have seen last year many attacks. Some important one was the spear phishing attack against the German steel mill. This happened really in a steel mill, and there was physical damage of the control system itself. Spear phishing comes from the phishing, and phishing is the abbreviation for password plus phishing. That means that's a special routine to steal passwords from communication lines, and attackers using that to get unauthorized access to automation systems. Something similar is the heartbeat vulnerability against transport layer security. That is really a security bug in cryptography. So some hackers using this kind of software to dive into the SSL transport layer to get confidential information, and the Dragonfly attack is simply a malware which collects confidential information from internet communication. Similar scenario in the UK. They had distributed denial of service attacks, simply malware against web service providers and cloud service providers. We had here as well phishing mails using really or doing password stealing, and something outstanding happened in Austria. An energy supply network was attacked. Data overflow was a case, and because of that the energy supply was really interrupted for a couple of minutes. So you see here really what we are going to discuss, that is not fiction, that is reality. These things happen, and it's happened here 2014 in Europe. And not only Europe was target, North America was target as well. So next slide, please. So I have some feedback here from the North American cyber incident. The source is the ICS third group, and these numbers are really monitored between September 2014 and March 2015. Interesting here, maybe over 4 years they have realized there are in average 3 vulnerabilities per week against the critical infrastructure, and critical infrastructure is more or less the industrial automation systems. And on the right side here, the most prominent incidents: spear phishing, network scan, weak authentication. So you see that is absolutely in line with the European experience. So obviously attackers and hackers are well organized. They're using this kind of free software to attack targets, and that's the reason why they attack obviously around the globe in the same way. So to really summarize the actual cyber incident situation a little bit, coming to the next slide. Here is a summary of what we've said. I've highlighted 4 bullet points with this little spark here I like to discuss with you. Let's start on the left-hand side with the hacktivists. The hacktivists create fear and uncertainty. That's correct, they do. But the hacktivists itself are normally not the really dangerous people. The really dangerous people are, and that is just below the hacktivist, cybercrime as a service. So today we have really organized group offering cybercrime as a service to customers, whoever that is, getting money, whatever, from the industry to remove or to stop attacks after a certain period of times. So this is a complete new behavior, and that can be monitored around the world. If we are going now to the right side, This is really, we can see there are two new abbreviations. This BYOC, it's bring your own code. That means more and more industrial automation using out-of-the-shelf products, computer technology, Ethernet communication, whatever. So there are open interfaces, and for an experienced engineer it is relatively easy to write some routines to do open communication, and because of that nobody knows if that is really secure. So this bring your own code that has to be handled in future, so we need some research. If anybody is using his own code, then the question should be allowed if this code and if this routine is really secure. Another big trend we can see is bring your own device. That means we see more and more people coming with mobile phones or with tablet computers on site, checking emails, but sometimes connect to HMIs or configure PLCs, whatever. And this own device are completely out of control because there's a specific software loaded on it. It is sometimes used in private environment, not always is a virus scanner in use, and so on and so on. So bring your own device is really a trend which is not easy to manage, but should be included in the security standards and routines of the operators and end users, because we cannot ignore this. So we cannot ignore bring your own device, and we cannot ignore bring your own code. So to do the final conclusion, next slide please, on the cyber incidents. Quite often the automation suppliers should solve all these challenges, but if you really analyze a little deeper, poor password performance, accidental data disclosure, sharing too much information on social media, and not realizing you are the target, these are really human issues. These are operator issues. So with other words, we cannot use only technology to improve the security in automation environment. We have to change human behavior as well, and we have to change human behavior in a, let's say, in a security manner. So people have to realize, operators have to realize they have to behave different in future to really be secure in the automation environment. So we cannot really delegate this simply to automation suppliers and ask them for deliver highly secure components. That's not good enough, especially not in brownfields. Okay, so ASC has deployed an interview and survey in 2014, and I'm going to share some results with you. Thank you, Florian. So we asked the first questions: what are the most important drivers for security investments? And what we get here is really process and people safety. That is obvious. And process uptime or availability. That is really obvious. So we expect both answers here, that they are highly ranked. But we were surprised by the second last, and that is regulatory requirements. Because we have heard in North America, we have the CERT group, we have heard here in Europe, we have now the CRITS group. That means we have some groups really working on standards and best practices and regulation, how to harden automation system, but not many people feel this regulatory is really helpful or is important enough to really invest money to following these rules and routines to harden the automation system. So this answer was a surprise, but anyhow, that's the real world. Coming to the next slide, one other answer from this ASC questionnaire. And we asked really which of the following are major constraints to your ICS cyber efforts. And what we found out here is really lack of understanding of difference between IT and ICS cybersecurity and lack of resources. These are ongoing ICS cybersecurity challenges for years. So that has not been stopped, and I think the education circle has to go on and on. So we are still in a learning spiral. I think we are doing better and better, but there are definitely training needs, and that is in line with the conclusions we discussed before. One other interesting answer was here really the third last one, lack of top management concern and support, and lack of plant management concern and support. That looks like that these major hurdles has been overcome. So the management team really understood and understand today cybersecurity is a real issue, and they have to do something against this. So obviously, if operators asking for implementing security, the management seems to be the supporter. So coming here to the industrial cybersecurity of tomorrow, because we already discussed the situation today, and we can say, hey, is it good enough if we just close the gaps that we are secure enough for the today challenges? And of course, that is not good enough. And I would like to share with you two things. In this little table, we have here on the left-hand side the today's industrial cybersecurity, and on the right-hand side the future industrial cybersecurity requirements. And I would like to share or discuss with you the mission and the people statement. So today, in our plans, really availability, and we have heard that from the survey is important, and you see this little abbreviation there, AIC, and A stands for availability, I stands for integrity, and C stands for confidentiality. So these are really the overall objectives to secure today industrial automation systems. But tomorrow we need the combination on the right-hand side on AIC and CIA. And CIA is not the police department here. CIA stands in this case for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That means we have to keep the plans available, but at the same time we have to keep the data confidential, because if we are going to use in future more and more cloud computing and this kind of stuff, confidentiality of this cloud data is quite important as well. If we see now the people issue, today it is good enough to have internal teams concentrating themselves on industrial security. In future, we need teams coming from internal, but coming from external as well. We need really supplier service groups, we need public network service partners, and we need cloud service partners to help us out to get our automation equipment secure. Okay, with this in mind, coming to the next slide. And that is a graphical overview what's happened in the industrial automation. We have here on the top automation systems, on the bottom the device area, on the left-hand side the operational technology, and on the right-hand side the IT environment. And next slide, please. And today we are looking only from the security point of view on the ICS cybersecurity of automation systems. That is our view, and that is our focus point to achieve or to increase security on site. This will be different in future. Next slide, please. In future, we have to be really on all four areas. That means ICS cybersecurity is important, but intelligent asset cybersecurity becomes another important factor. Mobile device cybersecurity, I'm referring here to this bring your own device. And the IT cybersecurity, the confidentiality in cloud environments is another important factor. And to connect all of this, we need external partners to help us out. Next slide. Florian? Okay, really to have the conclusion here. So industrial cybersecurity is challenging and dynamic. So it's not good enough to have what we have today. We have to do better in future. we have to establish a strategy for today and tomorrow. It's really not good enough to focus only on today. So we need definitely one integrated strategy for internet technology and operational technology and for the system devices. What's another important factor is really we have to periodically review our strategy and fill the gaps before they become a problem. Especially important is periodically review, because we have to review always if our plant is secure enough against the actual threats. And that is not easy to do, but people with virus scanners, they found routines how to do, and I think the industry should be in the position to do same things. And that is more or less the end of this discussion. So I think you get some views and ideas what's happening in future, where are we now, and my main message is here: take it serious and really develop an ongoing strategy to raise the level of security always. Thank you.
Thank you, Florian and Thomas, for the informative presentation, and as well to our attendees for being such interactive here with us, and we really enjoyed that. So hopefully we will meet you in the next webinar as well. And sure, if you have any questions after the webinar, we're as well happy to answer them offline and discuss them with you and our team. And thank you for attending, and we are wishing you a great day.